Welcome to Heal Through Humor, the podcast designed for you to learn about yourself and laugh along the way. In each episode, we'll explore the healing power of humor as I sit down with guests to talk about mental health, relationships, self-growth, and the ever-evolving world of social media. I'm your host, Talia Bombola. Let's get started. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Heal Through Humor. I am especially excited for today's guest because I've been following you for quite some time. And like I joked off air, it makes me so grateful to not be single. You run a very great page, and I will let you introduce it. But I'm going to introduce our guest, Erika Ettin, and you can take it away from here and tell people all about you.
Well, okay. So first of all, thank you for having me. I love your stuff too. I was so flattered and honored that you reached out. So I have a company called A Little Nudge, which is also my Instagram account that you know. And I've been doing this for 13 years, which is crazy when I think about it, but helping people with all aspects of not just online dating, but dating in general, although my primary focus is online dating. And so I share a lot about the do's and don'ts of online dating. A lot of people, as I'm sure you know, get in their own way at every turn through the profile, the pictures, the messaging, the dates themselves. And my philosophy is I don't care whether you do online dating or not, but if you are going to do it, I want to make sure you're doing it well, efficiently, successfully, whatever that means to you.
I am also in that camp. I'm a big fan of efficiency, and I've worked with many a client, both on and offline dating, either in therapy, really working on the deep stuff, or in relationship coaching. And I send them to your page often because there are so many good examples of like, here's what, like you said, to do or not to do. And here's reminders of like, at least it wasn't this bad. Like sometimes we just need a little nudge or a little sense.
Sometimes, look, at least you show you're in good company. You're in company.
Yeah, you're in company. You're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not alone. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. For better or for worse.
What got you started or like lit up about this topic? Because it's obviously grown a lot in 13 years, I would imagine.
It's grown a ton in 13 years. I can't believe I started the business before Tinder came out. Which is nuts.
Yeah.
My background's actually in economics and I have an MBA.
Okay.
So not this. So I used to work in finance, but separate and apart from that, I was a really early adopter of online dating, like well before people did online dating. I was young and naive. I was like, this seems cool. And, there weren't apps, there weren't smartphones. So what was out at the time? Match.com, a few other sites, not even OkCupid yet. That came out in 2003.
Yeah.
I started doing online dating in 2001.
Okay.
And so I did it on and off for, a few years. And because I'm a nerd and, I love economics and spreadsheets, I started a spreadsheet initially to track my own online dating stuff. So before you use your name, like Talia, Erika, you would use a username like, Fun Girl New York, whatever.
Yes.
And so I started the spreadsheet so I didn't accidentally write to the same person twice. You don't want to be writing to like, Mensch in Baltimore twice. And so then my nerdiness kicked in and I'm like, well, I'm keeping this spreadsheet anyway. I wonder what my response rate is. So if I'm reaching out to people, what percentage of those people write back to me? And if I make little changes to what I'm writing or to my own profile, do I increase that response rate? And then it got even further. Okay, now that I know my response rate, what's my conversion rate? So if a person writes back to me, what's the probability that we're going on a date? And obviously I cannot control other people, but I can control what I put out there and the words I use.
True.
And so I really increased that number too. And so then my friends started asking me like, you seem to be doing pretty well at this. What are you doing that I'm not? And so I started writing their profiles and giving them advice. And I've always loved writing and I've always loved working with people. And I didn't really get any of those needs satisfied in my finance job. So I quit my job 13 years ago and started A Little Nudge. And it's been similar since I started. Like people are people. So even though the dating landscape has changed a lot in terms of what sites are out there and sort of instant gratification with dating apps, a lot of the basic stuff will never change because people have the same needs. It doesn't matter what year we're in.
Right. And I would say kind of regardless of the platform, knowing what your needs are is very important. It can also lead
Sure.
people to use different platforms because there's still old school matchmakers out there.
Sure.
These agencies, I think, would they probably be called agencies? There's online dating, there's offline dating, there's telling
Yes.
people that you're available. There's so many ways to meet someone. And the purpose of meeting somebody, in part, is to get some of those relational needs met. And I think adding in online dating, I'm very curious to hear your take on this. I saw a huge shift when online dating really took off because I was on OkCupid before any of the apps were out, and then when Tinder came out, my parents like to joke and call it Hot or Not, which basically,
I mean, it kind of
was
anyway.
that, yeah. And then it switched over into like Bumble and all these other ones that took off.
Right.
That the type of dating platform the person is using, for me as a therapist, I definitely see it activate certain parts of my clients, of like the ones who are a bit more anxious or a bit more like workaholic or a bit like just their typology, their kind of temperament.
Which ones do they use? The anxious ones or the workaholic ones?
The anxious ones seem to be on all of them. They're not discriminant. They're just going to cast a wide net. Workaholic. I've had a lot of my workaholic, like high performing CEO female clients. They prefer to use a dating service or hire out, almost like they're like a company, to have somebody else do the work and then just text them like, show up at this time, this place, and you go, kind of like a personal assistant almost for dating.
Right.
And I have to kind of coach them to be somewhere in the middle, because we can treat a relationship like a business in the sense that we should have like a mission, value, goals, etc. But we can't just, nobody wants to feel squeezed in a quick happy hour from 5 to 7 p.m.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I don't know if you know this, but a large part of what I do is people do outsource their online dating to my company. Yeah. And I do say, show up at this bar on Tuesday at 5, but I completely agree with you that, nobody wants to
feel like,
wedged into someone's already busy schedule. Of course not.
Yeah. And I've worked, it stood out to me. I forget. I think it was like the beginning or middle of 2020 when people were like, what is happening with my life? I need to find a partner if we're going to be on lockdown. And I remember the theme being very much so, people were so busy, like if they were working, they would add more things to their work schedule, and then dating became smaller and smaller. And I remember talking to somebody, I'm like, no offense, but like, do you even have time to date? You're saying that you want it, but your schedule has literally 2 free hours a week. Like,
right. That's a conversation I have to have with clients all the time too. I mean, I'm sure you and I have very similar conversations with people where I'll have people. So how I do coaching is you can share your phone screen with me on Zoom, and I see what's going on in your app. And often it like gives me agita to see it, because I see all of these expired matches or old conversations, and yet they'll still want to keep swiping and finding more people. And I have to be the bearer of whatever news and be like, new is not better. You probably have 10 potential dates buried from 6 months ago who you just didn't answer. Why? And you probably don't do this as much as I do. I'm a little with the tough love, and
I'm tough love.
Okay, good. I like that. I make people sit in the uncomfortable for a minute. So like, I'll just ask for each individual one, why didn't you get back to them? And I'll just sit there and wait for an answer. And usually there is no answer. And it's fine if you're busy. Just admit that you're busy. That's fine. Just don't do more of the thing that you already can't do
well in the beginning.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I would say the majority of successful daters, online daters especially, the goal, I think, for my clients, I have them get off the app as soon as possible, as soon as they feel safe. I'm not telling them to like be in a rush. Obviously. Because women are very affected by the written word. We've seen that time and time again. That's why love notes and poetry. We see it in evolutionary psychology. We see it in trope media. It's true for a reason. Don't get so caught up on the app that you turn into pen pals. That's always the classic. Get off the app as soon as possible and be clear about the intentions of like, what is your purpose of dating? Is it just have some adventure partner for a couple hours a week? Great. That is a totally different intention than I'm looking to date to get in a long-term relationship or marriage. Knowing that helps them to be successful in their dating venture, so they're not having matches expire. And that's where I am very much so the tough love. I'm like, or does this remind you of your childhood in some way? Ooh. Like, when I'm like, yeah. And then I get to dive in. And that's my favorite part about being a therapist.
Ooh, and I just let it sit there. Like, and so what happened?
I'm like, who does this remind you of? And they're like, not my dad. I'm like, your dad. Like, here we go.
Oh gosh.
Here we go. We're going to dive right in. But
so we're saying the same thing in very different ways.
Yes. And letting the person sit in the silence and that gap between the question and the answer. I firmly believe every client I work with has the answers inside of them. They
I completely agree with you.
Time to formulate that answer or hear it out loud for themselves. Like the client that I worked with on the coaching of like, it literally, you're sharing your screen. I see your calendar. We are both seeing you don't literally have more than the 2 hours. How are you going to sit here and tell me you want to be married?
Right.
Where's this person going to have space? And then we uncover, well, I'm actually afraid to get too close because I've always known being a workaholic. That's where the deep work can begin. That I love working with people who do what you do because we can tag team the client and they can actually see even better success because tackling and deep.
I love when my clients say, I say something and then they're like, oh yeah, my therapist said this. It's a dream to me when they're also working with a therapist. So that way, like you said, it's the perfect tag team. Because I'm a coach. I'm only forward thinking. Right. I'm not delving back into anything. I'm not asking the why they are
the way they are.
I'm just trying to see where they are today and improve it for the future.
And I think having the support of both why am I the way that I am and how can I be different? That is the fastest catalyst for change. Not that we're in a rush, but with relationships.
No, of course.
People want to not be lonely, not necessarily that they don't want to be alone, because I think having alone time and solitude, even when you're in a relationship.
Well, that's healthier when you're in the relationship.
Yes, absolutely. You still have to have that. Don't lose track of
it. Agree.
And when you are dating, I think, again, obviously hormones are included in this in the beginning. It's like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing and I want to be with them every waking minute. I'm like, that's not healthy. That is not healthy. And why is that so attractive to you that you have, somebody who could be that available? That's not going to be consistent over time. It shouldn't be. Are they unemployed? Like, what's going on here?
Well, so that's an interesting point. So I was having a conversation yesterday with a client who wanted someone extremely successful financially. And I'm sure you come across this all the time.
Yes.
And he was treating her poorly. And those two things are not always, like that Venn diagram does not always overlap. But it often does a little bit, because if they're that into their job, they're that ambitious about their job, they're probably there longer hours and they have less time for anyone.
Yes.
And they had been on 3 dates, and it's kind of the opposite of what you were just saying. Like, I want to spend every waking moment. And you said, do they even have a job? This was the opposite. She was getting treated poorly. And I said, every gray cloud has a silver lining and vice versa. And so the silver lining to you is he makes a lot of money, which, whatever, we don't need to go into that. But the gray cloud is he has zero time for you. And he is fitting you in where he can fit you in. I mean, they went on their 3rd date to, I hope she's listening, but also not. He fit her in to go to the gym with him, but not even like a date. Like, let's go to this workout class or let's play pickleball. It was like,
I'll be at the gym at this time.
Yes. And I was angry on her behalf. And I actually coached her into breaking it off with him because it was just
not. He has time for that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I'm not sure how it sounded like it was going to relate when you said what you just did, but I think people have preconceived notions about what a relationship looks like. And for the one you were talking about, it's we spend 24/7 together, which is not healthy. And for mine, it was he makes all this money, but like, where does that get you? And so it's like having a balanced view of what an actual healthy relationship looks like, and knowing that it takes time to grow that. Because I'm sure you work with people all the time who are like, I hate dating. I just want to skip to the comfortable.
I just want to be married. No, you don't.
Okay, do you watch Love is Blind? Because I do, and that's not healthy. I mean, I love watching it for work purposes, but like, who are we kidding? I'd watch it anyway. But, oh my God, that is so... Can you imagine being stuck in a new home with someone you don't even know who has weird habits?
Nightmare.
And like does weird things.
Nightmare.
Oh my God.
You're being televised, so future people who are going to date you see how you are? No. Nightmare.
It's such a nightmare. I mean, I love watching it, but it's such a nightmare. And like, that's not what you want either. You don't want to be thrust into a relationship with somebody you don't know.
No, I cannot tell you how many clients that I worked with therapeutically and coaching wise throughout COVID who had them, they fell into that exact position because they were like
Yeah.
casually dating in the beginning of the year. Then the lockdown happened and they're like, scarcity mindset kicks in, obviously, survival
Yes.
mode. Well, I don't want to be alone. And what if I can never, it's like the end of the world for most people. So they moved in too quickly. I can almost say with pretty firm accuracy, I didn't run the statistics on a spreadsheet. I would say I'm going to guess 90% of them did not work out, because once the veil lifted and life opened back up and they realized that was not the end of the world, they were like, oh, I don't have to tolerate this. I could be another person. We're not a good match. Or we realize how unhealthy of a match we were because we rushed into this. I don't recommend people, I mean, this is not even about like traditional relationship terms. I don't recommend you give up your autonomy before you need to. Why would you move in with somebody when you don't have to? You're going to miss the alone time. I can assure you, when somebody else is living in your space, you're going to be like, why did I invite them in so soon? It's not even about the purity culture or any of that. It's just like, stay solo in your domicile as long as you can. You're going to miss it. Like,
I agree. And then I'm sure another thing you see kind of along these lines is people think meeting someone should be easy.
Oh, my favorite old wives' tale. Yes.
Oh, yeah. And it's like, well, I just, no, I often say most important things in life take time, work, and usually money.
There's some reason that is of sacrifice or compromise that you have to invest, and you choose where you invest it, or you choose where you waste it. That's really where it is.
Exactly. And so I don't believe it should come easy. No. I think it takes a lot of work. And, I always make the analogy, if you were job searching, would your resume be blank? Would it have typos? Would you just think you can get by on the font alone and not the content? And it's like, I work with people all the time who have nothing written in their profile. And I'm blunt. I say, do you only want to be recognized for your body? Because that's all you're giving people right now.
But I'm being mysterious. No, you're not.
That's not mysterious. It's silly.
That's not putting in the effort to get a match partner. Yeah.
And you wouldn't expect to get a job if you have a crummy resume and your cover letter is half full.
Yeah.
And so it's no different. And I would say finding your partner is probably more important than finding your job.
Oh, and so yes,
like when people say I don't want to spend the $20 on Hinge or whatever.
Oh, that drives me up a wall. I'm like,
I mean, I think of all of the things in my life that people spend money on. I mean, you don't even want. My friend just told me how much she spends on Botox every 3 months, and I flipped.
Thousands.
I flipped.
Yep.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, knock on wood. I mean, whatever. I haven't done it yet. We'll see. Never say never. But I was like, oh my God. And she was one of the people saying she wouldn't pay for Hinge. And I'm like, this is bonkers.
Yeah, but you'll spend thousands, because I live in Southern California, so it's expensive there too. And I have had Botox, so I do know how much money it is where you go. That it's an investment. And people often, to the 2 points you made, they think it's going to come easily, and they won't have to put in all the effort. And that somehow inversely correlates to, if I put in too much work, then it's not a worthwhile relationship because it's going to take no effort at all. When in reality, there's a certain amount where it's like, I'm putting in work, the other person's putting in work, we're growing together, and I'm sacrificing and compromising myself as a person for this to work. That's not a healthy relationship. That's not the type, but that's what's portrayed in media. One person typically self-sacrifices themselves or changes themselves entirely. Ugly Truth, great movie example, where she likes the cute neighbor. She changes everything about herself. She finally lands him. And at the end, she's like, I can't keep this up. This is so disingenuous and inauthentic. We're not even in love with who we really are. She takes her extensions out. She's like, you should have chilled the wine. Kind of the more controlling, directive side of her comes out. And he's like, oh my gosh, I would have not picked you in the beginning. Well, obviously, and that relates back to evolutionary psychology, that if we like the person we're with just enough to be like, oh, this is interesting, it may work. But if you see someone and you're like, I have to have them, I not possess them in a creepy way, that's definitely not healthy, but they're like, oh my God, they're the hottest, the richest, the smartest, whatever.
Right.
I need to have them. We will shapeshift and contort to fit what we think they want to obtain them. And then it doesn't land well. And women have usually, I work mainly with women, men too, but women have really good boundaries unless you're very attractive or very wealthy. And then all of a sudden, all things go out the window and we'll be treated however we want because the provisions of either what their societal status or their monetary status can bring. So I try to bring that part of evolutionary psychology into coaching so people can understand that I'm like, no, this is like you as a human. Like, this is a species thing. This isn't just because Jake is the hottest guy in the world. Like, I need to understand the patterns behind your behavior, because we're driven as a species to procreate and survive. Whether you even want to have kids or not, your brain is thinking, how could I further myself? That's really the core.
That's absolutely true.
And now, time for an ad break. Hey there, listeners. We're interrupting your favorite podcast to bring you a special message from our friends over at Therapy Swag. Are you tired of the same old boring wardrobe? Ready to add a dash of sass and style into your closet while repping mental health? Look no further than Therapy Swag, your go-to online store for snarky shirts and mugs. Their products make awesome gifts for friends, family, or anyone in need of a little pick-me-up. They are on a mission to break the stigma surrounding mental health. They use humor and creativity to open up dialogue, challenge stereotypes, and remind us it's okay to not be okay. Because let's face it, laughter is the best medicine. So why settle for ordinary when you can stand out with Therapy Swag? Head over to their website today and treat yourself to some snarky goodness. Trust us, your wardrobe and your mood will thank you. Thanks to our sponsor for supporting the show. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Do you ever do, I do role play sometimes.
I love role playing.
Okay, I love it. I'll just reverse it and tell the client everything they just told me and then ask them to give me advice.
Yes.
And it's always good advice.
Yes.
Because you can't see it when you're in it, but when it's someone else, oh, it sounds bad.
Yep. Or I'll work with couples I've worked with before, sometimes that have kids, and I'm like, what would you tell your child in that case?
Right.
Or I have a baby now. I have a 3-month-old. So
congratulations.
Thank you. So like, what kind of advice would I want to give to her? What kind of relationship would I want for her? What do I want to model and not model? That all goes into those decisions. And so many clients, when they're in the beginning of dating or the beginning of thinking about it, even when I've worked with women, it's this biological clock in some ways does click in around like 29 to 30, where it's like, oh, but that's because our testosterone starts to shift and we have certain levels shift that we're like, oh my gosh, I might die off as a species. And then all of a sudden, that's when you notice a lot of women be like very serious, like, I need to find a partner. I need to this.
Yeah.
We're not in a rush. And also, if you just lowered your standards to 0, you could be married tomorrow. Like, if all you want to do is be married to a partner, we could find some random dude on the street. Be very diligent that you actually have standards. That's going to take, like you're saying, time to get to.
I say that all the time because most people wouldn't have chosen their friends' spouses, for example. Right. And it's like, I do think though society often, and this is not off topic, it's all on topic, but I do think often society rewards the wrong things.
Yes.
And that's a shame to me because society rewards relationships when in reality, we don't know the nature of that relationship. It should reward happiness in whatever form that lies, you know, and, you know, I noticed even personally, I've been doing this for 13 years, you know, in that 13 years, unless I were with the first person I was ever with in my entire life, which I'm not, of course, I would have been single at various points in those 13 years. I know how people treat me differently. Which is why I never share anything personal on Instagram about my own relationships because 1, it's nobody's business, but 2, people think different things.
Yes.
And when one of them ended, it was not good before it ended. And ending it was the best choice I could have made. Not only that, it made me so much more empathetic and it made my advice so much better.
Yes.
And yet people were happier to hear when I was in a relationship. And that made me sad because there was no nuance there. You know what I mean? And so I think when, in addition to the biological clock, people see society rewarding certain things in media, and it drives behavior.
And we have such especially here in like Western culture in America specifically, we have such an emphasis, and certain states, it's like the younger, the better. We have such an emphasis on these milestones. Well, and they're based on often antiquated and unattainable, really financially now, ways of thinking. We'll just find the person and settle down and get married and then have kids.
Have a few kids,
and then there you go. And then people are like, what if I don't want to do that? And the powers that be are like, no, that's the plan.
Right.
Take it or leave it.
I do think society is getting better. I think our generation is certainly better than our parents' generation. I also live in Brooklyn, so you know, a lot of people here don't want children, perhaps because it's a city, perhaps because it's more progressive. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see that it's a choice now.
Yes.
And it's always been a choice, but it's more okay saying it out loud.
Yeah, but I think back in the day, I'm aging myself, back in the day, when you made that choice, you were often shunned. Like that.
Oh,
like
yes.
You did things out of the norm or out of order. Like, shame on you. We will
right.
not. You're outcast from society or the family system.
But that's usually their own. I mean, they don't want to admit it, but that's their own stuff. Because even like when I quit my job to start my business, oh my God, the amount of judgment people gave me, I could see it in their eyes. And I thought, just because you don't like your job doesn't mean I have to stay at my job that I don't like.
Right. And same thing, because I work with a lot of families and couples that the couple, they'll be voicing envy or jealousy of a couple that's making a different choice of like, well, they travel all the time because they don't have any kids. I'm like, doesn't any part of you, not that you'd ever get rid of your children, but doesn't any part of you wish sometimes that you're playing out the what could have been? Whenever you make one decision, you're not making another. That's life. Doesn't one part of you wish what our relationship had been like if we didn't have the kids and we got to keep traveling? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, it's okay to say that out loud. Like, you don't have to be envious or jealous as a way to cope. You can voice out loud and then maybe go take more trips with or without the kids if it's possible. So I think looking for what kind of relationship do I want and what is informing that? Is it the societal trope? Is it that I want exactly what my parents have? Is it that I don't at all want what my parents had? There's, a lot of the families I work or individuals I work with, they come from either long lines of nobody ever got divorced or everybody was divorced. And so there's this underlying fear or expectation, if you will, that either we'll stay together forever or we're going to break up inevitably. And that is already marring the template for what they're using.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
You're putting too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah. It's the Homer Simpson meme where it's like you go on one date and he's like walking down the staircase in the wedding dress, like as the joke that it's like, it's the purpose of a first date is to decide if you want a second date. That's the whole purpose.
Yes.
That is
I would like to write that in a skywriter or like put it in fireworks or something, because I mean, that's why I came up with dating NATO, not attached to outcome, because it is that pressure. People put all of this undue pressure on themselves to feel a thing. In general, if someone says, I don't know, if they say the words, I don't know, after a first date, I tell them to go on a second date.
Yes.
If there's a question mark,
yes,
it's worth another.
Why? What's our... Yeah.
That's what, exactly. It's an hour out of your life. And I always say, like, what are you doing anyway? Scrolling Instagram?
Finding other matches? Yeah.
Right. Even if you get to that date and within 5 minutes say to yourself, oh my God, I was right the first time. This person is not for me. At least there's no more question marks.
Yes. At least now you know there's like the period at the end. You can move on with that close.
Exactly. You never have to, no stone unturned.
Yes. And I think coming at it from that perspective, and I think it was last year that I posted it, or had to be a year or two ago maybe, that I posted from a different podcast that I coach people to look at dating as data collection, like dating.
I say that all the time. I just had a note here that I wrote, need more data.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, you're like me. I have the sticky notes too. Yes.
Oh my God, I did.
Yes, I look like I'm living in the movie Memento, where I'm like slowly.
It's so much. I eventually pile them and then toss them.
Yes. Okay, I write them in a note on my phone though. God knows where that's going to go, and then I. Yeah. Okay. So we're the same person. That's good.
Yes. I knew I liked you, but now I really.
I really know I like you. But dating is data collection. You're gathering enough data points to decide, like on a chart or a plot graph, like how is this going to go? This was a good date. This wasn't the best. This you're with the spreadsheets. And if you look at it more analytically or more data based, not disregarding the emotion, but not only regarding the emotion, that's where more successful relationships can come into play, because relationships are instances and moments of relating. When people say they have a 30-year relationship, not every second of 30 years is spent together. It's any moments that you're together added up over a start and end point of 30 years. And people hear that.
It's cumulative.
It's cumulative, and they're hearing, oh, well, so-and-so's been together for 20-something years. You have no clue what goes on behind the scenes. A lot of the couples I work with too, when they come in on their first session, I would have, sometimes they don't either. We would have never known what would be uncovered in those sessions. Of
course.
They're going through some stuff. They've have a past. One person betrayed the other. They forgave them. One person wishes that, there's so much that goes on behind closed doors to lead to those long-term relationships. And sometimes I notice now more with the newer generation that they don't necessarily it's not that they don't want to have a long-term relationship, but they see this opportunity to break this pattern of their family system or the generational trauma. And they're like, but I don't want to be the person who sticks it out and has the 30-year relationship when I really want to get a divorce. Like,
right. But again, that's rewarded.
Exactly.
And so I also hate the term failed relationship, because if you're together for 30 years, 28 of those could have been amazing.
Yes.
That's not a failure. That is a huge success.
Huge success.
Most things in life don't last 28 years. Cars don't last that long. Beds don't last that long.
Especially now with modern technology. Yeah. If you have it from the 1980s, that heater's going to last. But that's about it.
No, okay, yeah, it's fine. So, but so, like, you know, when people come to you or to me and they say, well, I just, you know, I had a failed marriage, or no, I'll actually push a little, like, what?
Why?
You know,
what defines?
Yeah, or what makes you say that? Or like my last, you know, or even just taking it back to online dating, like, you know, I don't have luck with online dating. It's like, it can't all be boiled down to that, because then it's the narrative they're telling themselves. So if someone says I'm not having luck with online dating, I immediately ask, what does that mean? I'll ask, where is the obstacle? So anyone who comes to me, I say, where is the biggest obstacle for you? Is it that you're not getting I give them like a drop down, just verbally. Is it that you're not getting matches? Is it that no one's answering your messages? Is it that the conversations are stopping in the middle? Is it that you're not getting dates? Is it that the dates aren't going well? Is it that the dates are going well and then they reject? You know, where is it? And usually we'll be able to pinpoint a few things. And then I'll say, well, have you ever had a good experience? You know, have you ever had a really positive? And they'll be like, well, yeah, I dated someone for 3 months last year who I met on Hinge. And so I'll be like, so you have had success, but it's getting overshadowed by maybe more recent experiences. We'll have to talk through all, because that's like the recency bias. And it's hard to get people to think that way, but it's easier in people's mind to put things in buckets sometimes.
Yes. And I think the black or white thinking or magical thinking is very common in relationships, to your point of like, well, it was failed. I'm like, a definition of failure is like an unsuccessful attempt. I think that's actually the dictionary definition.
Okay.
So it's an unsuccessful attempt. It's not a failed engagement or a failed.
No.
There's so many couples I've worked with. I'm like, in coaching, I can just say it, but in therapy, I have to gently dance around it ethically. But I'm like, and there's sometimes where I'm like, can I take my therapist hat off for a moment? They're like, yes. I'm like, it's just not. I'm just not. Based on what I've studied, here's the research, and like I'm trained in like Gottman, and they train us to be able to decipher within a few minutes or a few interactions if it's going to work or not based on these things being present and the willingness to work on them. So like there is data to reference it. But there's times I'm like, if nothing changes from this point forward, would you stay? Is usually the question that I ask.
It's a good question.
Partner, and some of them are like, well, no, we should change it, and then they are ending up to be what they want to be. And then some are like, oh yeah, why are we, it's like the sunk cost fallacy in real estate. You buy the lemon house, you're like, well, if I just change the roof and the plumbing and the this and pull it back to the studs, I'm like, buy a different house. Like you're on the market that has what you want, that you won't have to spend thousands of dollars translated to like years of your life fixing or changing this person into who you want them.
So you're seeing people in the relationships. I'm saying, you know, when sometimes it's right in front of you. Like you go on 3 dates, and for example, the gym one.
Yeah.
I said, this is his best behavior. Okay. Yeah. Why do you want to be with this person if this is his best? Like he has given you a blueprint for the rest of your life. Yeah. It's not good.
No,
not good.
No, not what you probably want or need.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, so I love that you asked that. If nothing changed, because I could ask that after someone's second date, third date. If nothing changed, would you want this? That's a really good question.
And sometimes people say yes, and I'm like, great. Then how can then we optimize what currently exists? And that's not changing the person. That's if you really like these parts about them or traits about them, how can we emulate those more? How can we incentivize that more? If you like how they make you feel and you're now able to focus at work because this person's texting you consistently, so you're not too anxiously attached, how can we keep that going in a chill but not downplaying your own needs kind of way? Like being able to honestly ask, like, if this is going to be who they are, like you're saying, we're usually our best in the beginning, if this is how they remain, will that work for you for a year? For 5 years?
Right.
Would you want this example? For some of the clients I work with, they want kids. Would you want it for your kids? So asking those kinds of questions helps people to bring their logic brain back online rather than just the emotion primal brain. And they're like, oh, in that case, no. And I'm like, you can't fall in love with potential, caveat, unless the other person also sees their potential.
Okay, sure.
Voiced that to you and is actively working on making that potential a reality. Other than that, you're just projecting onto them who you think that they could be. I always give the example of like the classic like girl who's dating the guy who's like a SoundCloud rapper with a mattress on the floor. And she's like, well, he could be an engineer. I'm like, has he ever said that he wants to do that? No, but I just think he stop it right there. He doesn't want to be that. Unless you walked in and he said, sorry about the mess. I just want you to know I'm transitioning from this one career to the other.
Right.
That's totally different because then you can kind of be like the ride or die on the side of watching them grow into it. And there's, we study often, like there's two different types of male mindset. Typically, this is not that reductive. It's the guys who want to have all the kingdom built before they feel like worthy of moving the queen in, so to speak. So they'll date you, but they might only give 1 or 2 dates a week because that's all they feel like they can win at. And then there's the other type of guys who are like, no, I want the person with me while I build this because I need that support, and trying to make one into the other is not going to work. So the hyper successful ones that only have room for AD, there's a place for them in the dating world, but it's usually not with the women who want to be with, I want to build this with you.
That's interesting. So I often see the opposite of what you said. So not someone seeing someone's potential and like he could be an engineer, but more he's between jobs. Ew.
Oh, you.
And I'll be like, well, he had a really great job and he left it to pursue something he's really passionate about and has to build that and has a ton of ambition. Ambition to me overshadows job type any day. So I actually find it's usually the opposite, where someone will penalize someone for the exact moment in time where they are instead of seeing that they have the ambition and the potential. So that's interesting.
That's refreshing to hear that there's more, obviously.
Well, yes and no. Yes and no.
It should be a blend. We should have these people meet.
Or like, you know, yeah, anyway.
It should, because there should, I think there could be a benefit to having a blend of, if they're weird, this is where the therapist side of me comes in. Where was that in your childhood? Was your parent ever between jobs? Was there financial insecurity? Do you feel envious because you never got to pursue your passion? Like I just play on the deep end a lot of the time. So I would always be curious if I was working with the clients that you just described, to give them that tough love of like, why is it triggering to you? That why don't you believe that they will have that? Because you're right. Ambition, especially when you're dating, to have somebody who's ambitious and willingness is the number one trait. If that makes them concerned, can I bring that to the partner that I'm dating? And can they assuage my fears and be like, I know this brings you anxiety that I'm in between jobs. What do you need to see from me to give you that peace of mind or clarity if they're like further on in their relationship as well? Like I always coach people not to be so quick on writing people off unless they have the list of like, I'm never going to tolerate this no matter who it's from. If there's something on that list, then yes, because by default, that's violating one of your personal standards and values. You don't need to give that person a second date if something comes up. But there's so much to be said for not writing it off so quickly, because it's like, oh, they have this, I have all these judgments about what I think that could lead to. I'm just going to write them off. I'm like, you don't get to decide that person's life.
I'm going to read you something.
Yes.
So I had a client do an exercise recently.
Oh, yay.
And I asked her, I have to find the text, but I asked her to, here it is, to write down any assumptions she was making.
I love this exercise.
Well, she excelled at the exercise, but it was hard to read.
Yeah.
She said, okay, to write down any assumptions I'm making. She's in her 60s, by the way, or at least late 50s. I don't know. Men living in apartments won't want to go to plays, museums, lectures, or cultural events.
Big assumption.
And I said to her, I live in an apartment, and I see a Broadway show every week. Well, you're younger, you're that. I'm like, okay. So, only college graduates will be interesting conversationalists. Oof, that was a big one.
That's a big one.
If I split the bill, it's a sign that he does not view me romantically. If a man votes Republican or rides a Harley or keeps a gun in the house, not mean that he would not be a fun date and that I could accept differences if we spent sufficient time together and fall in love. That was a big one. Anyway, yeah. I'm not commenting on any of the assumptions.
Right.
But seeing it was interesting. Seeing it in writing.
People need to see their own blind spots too. That's why I love like the analytic therapy that I'm trained in. I chose that because it allows people to, as close as possible, besides hypnotherapy, tap into their subconscious of like, where did these beliefs stem from? And do you have flexibility or rigidity? Which one are we working with in that? Because there's people who don't want to move out of, I'll never think otherwise, that somebody who didn't go to college can be a conversationalist. Okay, then the dating pool is going to be very limited by your own doing.
Right. And this was an interesting case. I never do this, but after our first session, I told her that I didn't think I was equipped enough to be working with her because she had such deep-seated beliefs about people and just an inherent bias and sadness, I would say, that I referred her elsewhere because I knew my own limitations and I couldn't overcome them.
Yeah. And knowing, I think any provider of coaching, of therapy, especially ethically, we have a duty. Anybody who's working with another person on their life and big life decisions that change their trajectory, if we're not a good fit, the best thing to do is...
Well, right. I also saw, talk about red flags, you know, we talk about that with clients, but like I saw one that after that session, the one session, she emailed me and said, so what I'm hearing is you're telling me I shouldn't date. I'm like, no. And so I was so scared that if I continued that coaching relationship, every word of mine would get twisted somehow. And then, you know, who wants that?
Yeah.
I'm just here to help. You know?
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to help you. I'm not trying to help. Yeah, I'm not on trial. Why are we doing this? Yeah. It's so important to also be clear. That's why I love your page, because you show the receipts, like you show the screenshots of messages people are receiving, messages of people asking you like, hey, here's where I'm thinking and here's where I'm at. And that's so helpful because it helps people to know, oh, I'm not the only one who feels or
yes, exactly.
Or I'm not the only one who's getting these kinds of messages from other people, not assumptions about, but it can be comforting to know it's like, oh.
No, of course. I mean, look, and sometimes I post them as a joke.
For sure.
But like for entertainment value. Sure. Like obviously not all men write disgusting things about their man.
That is true. Some do. Some will send pictures.
Too many do.
That's the best when I've worked with clients where like the first message and I'm like, that's really bold. Like I would love to have the confidence of a dude who just sends his junk sight unseen, not even a first date, not even a how do you do.
I can't.
Not even a how are you, just like here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, in my 13 years of doing this and managing mostly women's accounts, the answer should be 0 dick pics. But not me personally, but a client of mine got one once. And I was glad that I was able to shield her from that. She never saw it.
Yeah. When I was dating online, I saved a dick pic that I got. And then when other guys would send me their dick pics, I would send that dick pic to them. And then they would be like, ew, I don't want to see that. And I'm like, same. Because I was more petty. And I'm like, I don't want to see that.
I love petty. That's perfect.
I loved you. That's weird. Women are not.
Well, it has to be, it's invite only.
Yeah. Put a hat on it. Make it funny. Like, I don't
know. I mean, look, if two people are in a relationship, great.
But
that's wonderful.
Yes. If you
there has to be some consent there.
Yes. Yes. Because
you can't unsee it.
I've worked with people in a relationship.
Did you say put a hat on it? Yes. I bought this hot sauce once, and it came with a knit hat on it.
Perfect.
I'm picturing that now. Yeah. I wish I weren't. But
I like humor, obviously. Make it funny, but I wouldn't even. That's not my style of connecting romantically. Like I'm not a pictures person. Like maybe I'll send it to my partner, but like receiving it, I'd be like, cool, see him later tonight. Like, why? It's not, but because we try, men try to impress, and if that's what they think is the most impressive thing, or they're really trying to just be clear, like, here's what I'm in for, at least.
Yeah, but that tells you a lot. That tells you what you need to know about a guy, because unfortunately, a lot of penis owners derive their confidence or lack thereof from the size, which is unfortunate, because I wish that weren't the case.
Yeah, and there's so many other great traits that they could lead with that eventually he will discover.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. No, I'm glad we're on
Anyway.
stage about that. No, it's because I've never once heard a male client I've worked with be like, oh, she just randomly sent me a picture of her boobs. Like
Well, they'd be thrilled. They wouldn't leave their house that day.
They're like, I'll see you next week.
Exactly. Session canceled.
I'm good. Dating cured. I'm cured. I'm good. I don't need your service.
All it takes is a boob. Who knew? Yeah. Anyway.
It's good. Good.
I feel like we shouldn't wrap up on like.
No, we can't. We have to pick at least one more topic to wrap up on. What is something that you wish more people knew about dating and relationships?
Woo, that's a broad one. I think we've covered a lot of it, but gosh, let's narrow that question down.
This is probably something that you do give to your dating clients. If you could give them one piece of relationship advice that you think would be helpful in their dating journey, I know you've given some today. What might one of those be?
If you would say it to a friend, say it to the person you're dating.
Okay.
That would be my biggest advice.
I like that.
And I'll give an example that I often give when I give that advice. I had a woman I was working with. She's in her 60s. She went out on a lunch date with this guy. And she said they got there. They ordered water or soda or whatever. And she's like, he never offered me lunch. And I'm like, what do you mean? It was a lunch date.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, well, he never said, like, what would you like to order? Are you hungry? And I'm like, but it was lunch. Why didn't you just order it? So she called me after and she goes, I'm lightheaded. I need to go, eat some. And I'm like, why didn't you just say, I'm hungry, I'm going to order a sandwich? Oh, well, that's what I mean. If you would say it to me or you or a friend, say it to your date.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. Because there should be a friendship also involved in the relationship.
Well, you should not feel like you have to walk on eggshells.
Especially
and it's a sandwich.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand not ordering like ribs. Like I get that.
Fine. Maybe or not the lobster.
Yes.
But like if someone invites you to a restaurant for lunch,
I would order.
Or even, I tell clients, even if they're going out on a drinks date, I say, you know yourself. If you can't drink on an empty stomach, you say, hey, do you mind if we order an appetizer?
Yes. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. That's where my specialization of confidence and assertiveness comes in, is having people feel comfortable being their authentic selves and knowing themselves to then let another person have the opportunity to know them. And
exactly. And if someone judges you for asking to order an appetizer,
not the one, because
that's a problem with them.
Yeah, I eat a lot of food, so that's already a red flag.
I love food.
We're getting tapas, okay? So that's happened.
Yes, please. Also, when you're in New York, you and I are going out, okay?
Hell yeah, I would love that. Okay. And we will get all the appetizers.
I want all the foods. I really just want one bite of everything.
That's what
always.
Yes, they should make a restaurant where it's like a sampler platter.
Call it one bite.
One bite. Yes. I'm in. Thank you. I need to tell people where to find you.
Yes.
Is it a little, there's an underscore somewhere, or no? It's just
just at a little nudge. All the things at a little nudge. Instagram, my website. My name is Erika, but you will find me, and I love what I do. I love helping people. I love getting people out there. I love sharing all the things I've learned. I offer both coaching and what we were talking about before, basically taking over your online dating. So basically I can do online dating with you, or I can do it for you.
I love it.
So those are the options.
Yeah. And your page is such a good comic relief and also good, which is, again, my personal favorite. So selfishly, that's why I also wanted to have you on the podcast, because I was like,
I'll take it.
Get along.
Thank you.
I was here for an hour, so I'm glad we got to.
No, this is perfect. I'm so glad you invited me. This was wonderful. And I think you and I are very much aligned in the advice we give, which is always validating to hear.
Yes, that there's other people, there are other dating gurus, I don't know, guidance, whatever. There's other dating guidance out there that we can be aligned on. So I appreciate that. And I will be directing all of my clients to your page if they aren't already following you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Heal Through Humor. If you like the show, can you please go on your favorite platform and rate, review, subscribe, all of the terms that we usually throw out. I would really appreciate it, and I would love to get more listeners just like you in front of the podcast. And if you have an idea for a guest, please feel free to DM me at Talia Bombola. I would love to hear from you. Until then, I will see you on the next episode. Take care.